Okay, welcome. Welcome to part 3 of our mini series on how to figure out what you want and how to make it happen, how to create it in your life. So, real quick recap. In part 1, we laid the foundation and we did a really simple exercise together to help us get in touch with our own willingness, because that is such a key ingredient to figuring out what you want and then actually making it happen, getting it, creating it in your life. And then also, once you know what you are and are not willing to do, you can begin to identify what's been getting in your way. And you can only address these things if you know what they are and where they are. Part 2. In part 2, we actually talked about 2 things. And the first one is, what is wanting? I mean, what does wanting even mean? And then the second part is, why? Why do you want the things that you want? What do they really mean to you? What do they represent to you? Now, today in part 3, we're going to talk about the third key ingredient. This is one, okay, let me warn you up front. This is one that most of us, many of us, have never thought of. We've never considered. And because of that, I'm going to repeat myself a number of times, okay? You've been warned, okay? So this time we're going to turn the tables and we're going to look at your desires from the perspective of the object of those desires. Now, what does this goal or relationship want from you for itself? What does it want from you? You know, we're really good at thinking about what we want, even before we're entirely clear why we want it. And we feel this, we feel a yearning and emptiness and need, a want, and we'll run with it. We'll run with it. And we're really good at presuming that the relationship or goal that we desire wants the same thing. This is a minefield, okay? And we're going to talk about this particular piece as a dynamic, okay? And the best words to express it are the giver becomes the receiver, becomes the giver, becomes the receiver. Because giving and receiving are often thought of as opposite actions or experiences, and they're actually the same. They're part of an infinity loop, a flow. You can't have one without the others. It's like yin and yang. It takes both the giving and the receiving to make the whole. Okay, and it's also really helpful to think of all goals and all desires as if they're relationships, and that the same dynamics for creating good relationships apply to our goals, all our goals. So this loop of giving and receiving, it is designed to flow completely easily, naturally, and infinitely unless we break it. And there are 4 major ways that can happen. Okay? The first way, we stay focused on what we want and what we want this other person to do. Now, we can assume that it's right and good for both of us because it's what we want. And we can do that with little or no consideration for the other party's actual feelings, desires, or needs. We're just assuming. Second way, we can impose our giving. We can ignore the preferences of that person or goal, and we can give only what we want to give. Or in other words, we can say and do, be and act and whatever, only what we want to say and do or be and act. And we expect the other party to respond in whatever way it is we want them to respond. Maybe it's to be grateful or to change or to deliver. But, that's not necessarily how they would naturally respond, or even how they would prefer to respond. And, big and here, our tendency is to blame them for not doing what we want them to do. Third, we can grasp and grab at our own receiving. We can insist on receiving what we want to receive, getting what we want to get. And what's funny? When we see someone else doing this, we are quick to call them a taker. We recognize it, but we're not so quick to see it in ourselves. And the fourth way, sometimes we can give and do and be exactly what the other person wants in exactly the way they prefer, but hang on to our own expectations about how they should reciprocate, what they should do in return, how they should show gratitude, what they should do in return. All of them will break the cycle of giving and receiving. Because what's missing in all of these is balance and harmony and compassion and empathy and reciprocity. And remember, this is a dynamic. And that holds true whether we're talking about relationships with people or with goals. It could be health or money or career, or it could be anything. You know, when we retrain our brains to think of everything as a relationship, it actually simplifies things, because then the rules for healthy relationships apply to everything. And that's a good practice to get into, to treat everything like a relationship. So these 4 ways of breaking your own giving and receiving dynamic that I just mentioned, they are guaranteed to do one thing. They are guaranteed to get in the way of having your desires fulfilled, including the relationships you want, including, achieving your health goals or your career goals, or even really figuring out what you really want to do to fulfill your own potential, or to live your own purpose. But having expectations that other people, or even our goal desires, that they should behave in the way we think they should behave, is guaranteed to destroy our own results. And every one of these 4 ways that we can break the giving and receiving cycle is selfishness. Maybe in disguise, but selfishness. So let that sink in. Now, timing is everything. And by timing, I don't mean, well, you need this to do this on Tuesday at 9 a.m. This kind of timing. It's way too easy to say, I'll do this when they do that, and feel completely justified, because after all, no one wants to be taken advantage of. So have you ever heard the old wisdom about priming a pump? You pour a little bit of water in to get the flow started. And in the same way, we must be willing to give first to get our own flow started. However, hear me here, listen here, there's a huge difference between putting ourselves in a place to be taken advantage of versus priming the pump of giving and receiving. So when you prime a pump, a water pump, you're pouring in a little water, and that water combines with the water that is already there waiting to create a flow. The best way to protect yourself against bullying or being taken advantage of is 2 things really. First, get crystal clear about what you want and why you want it. Okay? And that may be a work in progress, but that's okay, because the more clear you become, that leads to setting and tending clear boundaries around your desired future. And as you become clear and your boundaries become clear, you can guard against being the first one to breach your own boundaries. Now think about that for a minute. Boundary breaching always starts with letting a piece of the fence fall down, leaving a gap into, letting it fall into disrepair, so to speak. Your boundaries are like a privacy fence. Anyone who is invited can see what's inside, and those who are not invited can't. And the only way they can see what's inside is if we invite them in on purpose or on accident. And a lot of times accident means that we allow a breach in the fence where they can sneak in. So again, let's pretend that all our desires and goals are a form of relationship. And really, that makes a lot of sense when we realize it takes people to bring our desires into fruition, even if the only person it takes is ourselves. Me, myself, and I. Okay. Again, full circle again. Fundamental to good relationships is being able to consider the perspective of that other person or goal. You may not agree with that perspective, but hopefully you recognize their right to having their own perspective and you're willing to take it into consideration. If not, I strongly suggest that you stop being surprised by not getting what you want because you are not doing your part to make it happen. So, question 2, today's question. What does this goal or relationship want from you? It's asking you to step outside your comfort zone, outside your own, tunnel vision, your own myopic perspective. And it's asking you to use your imagination to walk away, and then look back at yourself as if you are being sized up, as if that goal or relationship is sizing you up. It asks you to see yourself as that desired goal or relationship might see you. Would it pick you? Have you ever wondered that? So to illustrate this, let me tell you a little story but from a former client. Now, this particular story has to do with finding romantic love because we often go there when we think about living a more love-guided life. Romance seems to be the first thing that comes to mind. So I guess you could say that choosing this particular story could be a little bit of a risk because quite a few of you right now might already be arguing that you aren't looking for a romantic love at this point. So what does this have to do with me? Well, it doesn't matter whether you are looking for a romance or not, or to enhance the relationship you're in or not, because one of the things is stretching beyond your own knee-jerk presumptions is exactly what you need right now. I mean, love is love. It isn't restricted to romance just because we tend to think of that first. So I've chosen this particular story because, for another reason, because, getting people to do what we want them to do or change in the way we want them to change, it comes up so often. And the story is actually a good illustration of how that's playing out behind the scenes. So here goes. Oh, and by the way, these stories are shared with permission. The names have been changed, but just thought I'd share that with you. Anyway, first one is Sharon. Now, Sharon is unhappy. She was unhappy with her love life, and she'd been alone for a very long time, and she was very tired of being alone. And that was her why. That was why she wanted to find a romantic partner. So her answer to question 1, what do you want? It really came down to a very detailed description of her ideal man, and we could sum it up by handsome, funny, fit and slim, prosperous, supportive. Okay. But, big but here, she also believed that there were really no good men left, that all the men out there had been thrown back, or they wouldn't be available. Clearly, this woman didn't fish. You throw them back so they can get bigger and better. Anyway, she was just holding on to this belief that there were no good men out there. But to answer question 2, what does this goal or relationship want from you? Because she was still hopeful, Sharon had to create his list. She had to turn the table and put herself in his shoes. She had to ask her task was to take her own list from question 1 and then make a second list of the qualities and the characteristics that the person she was describing would be looking for in his own mate. She had to get inside his head and his heart and not just re-describe herself. That is so tempting, just to re-describe yourself. But she had to pay close attention to what he was saying in her imagination. And she had to, it's kind of like pretending that she was eavesdropping on this man as he was describing the kind of woman he would want to one of his own friends. So after writing and scratching out and writing and scratching out and writing some more, she finally, she slammed down her pen. She says, This is hopeless. He is not looking for me. She, she was so angry, and she also just had a humongous revelation. Her entire focus had been on what a relationship could do for her, with little or no thought, she'd probably say no thought, to what she could bring to the relationship. And by the way, this happens with all kinds of goals in relationships, not just romance. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at one item on her wish list: fit and trim. Okay, fit and trim. Now, by her own admission, Sharon was a couch potato. Now, those are her words, not mine. Okay? But she said she hated exercise of any kind and she loved eating. Now, she didn't totally like the way she looked, or felt for that matter, but she figured when she met the right guy that they'd get healthier together, that this could be a couple's goal. And she assumed that the right man wouldn't mind and might even get excited, and maybe that would be true. The problem was she was expecting this right man to look like he was already successfully doing the things that she was not willing to do. Okay? And that meant the type of man that she was hoping to attract was looking right past her. He couldn't even see her because he was looking for someone who was already taking care of herself. And in that sense, he wasn't looking for her. Okay? All right, let me share a couple more stories. And again, we're going to stick with some of the ones that are most common for women. They may or may not be true for you, but they are good illustrations. Now, this one is Denise. Denise had struggled with her weight, and she was really feeling held back in so many ways because of it. And she was tired of feeling held back. And she wanted a new story about her body, a new relationship with her body, a better relationship with her body. And so her answer to question 1, what do you want, was a detailed description of what her ideal body would be. And you could sum that up by saying, the main points were achieving her target weight, achieving her desired energy levels and fitness levels, and eliminating a couple of weight-related health issues. Okay, and she knew her why. Her why was to feel more attractive and to be more healthy and to feel more confident. Okay, and she claimed that she was already eating pretty well and staying reasonably active, and she was so frustrated. It's like, what more could my body possibly want? I am already giving it everything I am supposed to give, everything they say I should give. I wonder if you caught that. She assumed she knew what her specific body needed without asking, and she presumed that she was giving it what it should want. Now, you know what they say about assumption, right? Anyway, there have been lots of other stories. Marlene's husband had died, and she was feeling a little bit lost and alone, not sure what she wanted to do next, not sure how to define herself or to write a story where she was the star and not half the star, part of a couple. Suzanne, on the other hand, had divorced her husband. She was so angry at him, but she was angry more at herself because she wasn't reinventing herself as fast as she thought she should. Now, Charlotte was retiring, and Emily had been laid off, but they were both wondering what to do with themselves. And Allison, I actually can relate to this one pretty personally. She was feeling squeezed by the sandwich generation, taking care of aging parents and taking care of children and taking care of grandchildren. In fact, pretty much taking care of everybody else and neglecting herself. And, her feeling was, everybody wants a piece of me and there's not enough to go around. Where am I in all of this? But here's what I really want you to notice. Even though they started, or it may look like they started with very different goals, they were all looking for the exact same thing. And we saw this in question 1. They were longing to become truer, happier, more fulfilled versions of themselves, the next best version of themselves. And they wanted to take charge of their own stories. They wanted belongingness and wholeness and love from the inside out. And yep, that goes right back to question 1. So Sharon had been presuming that, or assuming that the problem was the lack of good men. And it turned out she was inadvertently repelling good men, because the ones who looked the way she wanted them to look couldn't see her, and she couldn't see the ones who wanted to join her in becoming, healthier, trimmer, fit. So double blindness. Denise had been assuming she knew what her body wanted, and it turned out though that she was giving her body what everybody said a body wanted, but not what her specific body wanted. So they were ignoring this dynamic of giving and receiving, and that included, pretty much ignoring their underlying why. Now remember, the giving comes first. This giving or doing or being, the actions you take, words you say or write, whatever, this giving first is a mating call for your desires. And that's true whether it's a relationship or a goal. It's the giving first that activates the dynamic, primes the pump, creates the desire within that goal or relationship to give you more of what you want in the way you want it. It's the love languages approach, or, my grandma would have said, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Y'all heard that one? But the catch to good giving and receiving is that we have to be willing to learn to consider the perspective of the recipient. We have to learn to consider what the recipient actually wants to receive and not just what we want to give. And we have to be willing to consider how that recipient might view someone who only wants to give what they want to give and only wants us to act like they want us to act, and that's true for a goal too. We have to learn to not impose our giving by giving something the recipient doesn't really even want. And we have to learn how to not be a taker in disguise. And without good giving, you have literally cut yourself off from whatever it is you desire, whatever it is you want to get, to receive, to create in your life. Again, quick recap. Giving and receiving are part of the same dynamic. It keeps both to keep the dynamic going, the flow going, to complete the cycle. And if you're only focusing on what you want and how you want the other people or the other half of your goal to behave, then you're cutting your likelihood of getting what you want to little or nothing, probably nothing. So in order to get what you want, no matter what it is, you must be willing to get things started. You must be willing to go first. You must be willing to signal God, Source, the universe, that you are ready and willing to do your part. And you do that by giving first, by priming the pump. And yeah, that means you give first in order to receive. You must. And whatever it is you desire is part of this dynamic of giving and receiving. And yeah, I'm repeating this a lot because it's that important. And it's generally either ignored or unknown. A lot of times this isn't something we've ever thought of before. So it also means you have to give something meaningful to the recipient. And again, whether that recipient is a relationship or a goal, I cannot stress that enough. What is it that they want to get from you? What are they looking for from you? Why would they want to partner with you to create this in your life? Okay? Or theirs. And it's math. This is the way the math of giving and receiving works. And giving and receiving always works with mathematical precision. You know, it's kind of a beautiful thing, because that means if you're not getting what you want, if there are things hanging out there that you still want, the first place to look is to you. You're in the driver's seat. You have complete control. You're in charge. Look at your own giving, your own actions, your own behaviors and beliefs and thoughts and words. It starts with you. So, here's your huge question. Are you giving what that goal or relationship, are you giving that goal or relationship what it wants? Or are you giving what you want to give and demanding it gives you what you want anyway? You would hate to be treated that way. You hate it when you are treated that way. And yet it is far more typical to think, I'll do this when they do that, and feel completely justified. We tell ourselves that all the time. And it's far more typical to give, what someone else says you should give. They say you should do this, or they say you should do that. You know what? Who is this mysterious, authoritative, all-powerful they? Who are they? And who put them in charge? So the good news is that the stories of Sharon and Denise and the other ones I mentioned, they didn't end with feeling hopeless or frustrated. Instead, every single one of these ladies, they're all former clients, and every single one of them found her starting point in question 1, and then completed her cycle through getting really raw and real through question 2. Question 1 and 2 working together helped them get more clear and more realistic, so each could begin enacting her part of the dynamic of bringing her desires into reality. And each one of these women created her own new story and her own happier ending. And you can too. So your assignment for question 2 for today is to make your second list. Take your list, your answers from question 1. Now we're going to flip it around. Answer each one from the perspective of this goal or relationship. What does this goal or relationship want from me? And as always, if you have questions or comments or whatever, pop them in the comments before, and I will see you next time. You got this, okay? Bye for now.